Again, I was saying earlier that we have to be careful on timing today. Hey, everybody, we are live. Before we start, we acknowledge the gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, whose people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Kw'ala's and Belmont Islands. We do not have any minutes from last time, but we're going to start with approval of the agenda items. Any late additions? Yeah.
Super quick one at the end, just to report on the seat pledge drive, second intake. Take a second, 1 second.
Okay. Where do you want to add that to? Updates? We'll call it 4.2. Thank you kindly. Anything else? Okay, the recommendation that the Community Center Joint Management Committee approve the agenda as amended for the June 12th, 2025. Councilor Getty. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Public comments. Is there anybody here?
There's no one in the waiting room.
All right. Moving right along. Business arising from the minutes. Production and programming coordinator job description, development, funding options. Gail. Starts off.
I actually didn't, I'm sorry, I didn't prepare. I only in the sense that I proposed something last week, and I think we're moving towards discussion around it as opposed to me presenting anything, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, yeah, let's continue the discussion because we essentially deferred it last time. Kim, is that a hand up? It looks like your feed is gone bad. Do you want to turn your video off?
Yeah, I just acknowledge that. No, okay, I can do that. How's that? Can you hear me now?
It sounds a little less choppy this way, so I think this is the safest bet for us to do. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, Judy did a revision on the document that was submitted the last meeting and did some minor adjustments to bring it in line with the spreadsheet, which I thought was very valuable. And so I'm assuming that we're looking at Judy's revised document of Gail's document. And I'm hoping everyone's had a chance to sort of take a look at that because it's just, she made a couple of suggestions in there that didn't change the overall spirit or tenor of the document, but was a good review just to make sure that it lined up better with the spreadsheet that was going to accompany it. And so anyway, I had a conversation with Steph about proposing that we use this as the document to discuss and go through, and that we move towards a motion to accept it.
Sorry, I don't recall that conversation.
Oh, just that we move like I proposed to you. You wrote a note to me about a potential motion, which was referred. Yeah, that's right.
The last session, I was sort of scrambling on the side, trying to capture some notes about what would be a proposed recommendation. So I just wanted to do that offline with the entire committee on the CC. And there's 30 minutes put aside for this discussion. I think there's a lot of detail in the job description. And so I don't know that we're ready to do a recommendation yet.
Councilor Getty.
If I may, before we get to the motion, then I think I wouldn't mind if we have a pretty broad general description or discussion. So when I've been thinking about this, I did this to help me sort out, there's the spreadsheet, there's Gail's or the HARS proposal, how does it fit together? So it's like a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but it doesn't actually, I use this to try and come up with some basic understanding principles. So I think, first of all, we all agreed that we need this position to get full return on the investment that we need, all of the money that's in, to try and fill it as much as possible and use the theater. So I don't think there's anybody that disagrees and is working against trying to figure out what this position to maximize the ability of this person to fill the theater. So full successful return on the significant investment. And I think we all should, if we don't already, agree that it's crazy to think that we can have the funding for this position from grants. There's so much competition, there's lesser dollars put into it, into arts, and then there's so many other competing interests. So I think that we have to figure out a way of having the baseline and figuring out ways of supplementing that. So whether we've got X number of hours guaranteed, whether it stays as part-time, or whether we're wildly successful and we get something that is, more than the 25 hours a week, that the grants have to be considered graded. That it's a bonus and it's something that we will use to our best advantage, but I don't think we can necessarily rely on it. So if the community is providing 2 years of seed money, then we have to figure out how this becomes sustainable after that. We have to keep really, really, really good records, I think, so that if it's not possible for that position to be entirely self-sustaining, then we've got the documents that we need to argue that we need to continue with some amount, some sort of seed funding, if it goes beyond the 2 years. And that's not necessarily, I think that's a difficult stuff. But, I think that that's something that we might need to argue, and it's something that we need to keep in mind, and I think that's record keeping. So, once we get the seed money sorted out, the Hearth also has the money from the foundation, and that's supposed to be used for programming, as I understand it. So it could be supporting any of these things. And in my mind, I'm thinking that all of these value-added kinds of things, that if that money is guaranteed, and we don't know what this council is going to do in terms of this seed money and the amount, but it seems to me that one of the things that Tony needs all the time is ticket sales. And if we use Eventbrite or Paper Bag or whatever, any of these other things, we pay 10% on all of our ticket sales, each ticket. So we keep our prices down so that we can put as many bums in the seats as possible. And at 25, I did a rough calculation. If there's 52 weekends and say 100 performance nights and 89 seats, which is half a house, which is very conservative, at say $30 an hour, $30 a seat, at 10%, that's 28,000. A reasonably conservative amount calculation that could be increased and could be a good supplemental source. So I don't know what the cost of setting up that booking system is. I'm guesstimating that it might be 10 grand. And if it is, that's the magic number that in terms of the foundation money. And I'm sure that they would be thrilled to know that that money was being spent in that particular way that would be ongoing and it would support all of the community. And I think that on island and off island and organized and disorganized groups would benefit and buy into having an option in terms of having help with ticket sales. So it's, if we can't get Phoenix in the pharmacy to do it all the time, or we don't want to, and it's, when those places are open and cash only and all the rest of it, then that I would strongly encourage that value added. So the document that the Hearts presented the last time talked about the development stuff as being later. That's a lot of the dark green in terms of that has to be put off. There's not enough hours. There's so much to do. It's not something that, and I think that has to be sorted out in terms of this person maybe playing a supporting role, pulling documents together, having researched the list of available grants if that hasn't already been done, doing some sort of stuff where if there's people on the Hearth, and I think that, Gail, you've been really very, very active in terms of writing the grants and supervising and making sure that it gets reported out and stuff like that. So that's a function that the PAC would take on. Some of the time of this person supporting that role, I think that that has to be spelled out and understood and committed to, because one of the things that we've argued or stated in terms of making this palatable to council is that it's going to be used, it would be most valuable as leverage in terms of the community isn't able to get any of these kinds of arts grants, but strong financial support from the community to the heart is something that is remarkable on a lot of grants and would be more successful. So I think the grant writing can't be put off, and that is something that has to somehow be part of this program, whether it's this person or whether it's somehow or other linked in. So there's a problem with, I think, small local production groups and small independent productions from off-island. I don't know enough about your the funding that you just got for the touring companies and whether or not that provides salaries for the performers or for the hearth. But there's the phone call, the discussion I had this morning with Heather Hodgson was that she knows somebody that's in an independent dance company and that they do small tours, and she'd love to come to Bullitt Island, but she couldn't possibly afford to give 50% of her ticket sales to anybody that was helping with co-production. She might pay for ticket the 10% and maybe the concession and some of these other things, but in terms of actually not receiving the income from all of the ticket sales would be problematic. There was also the question that was raised by Sienna earlier in terms of the last meeting in terms of figuring out these not big profit-making, independent, small producers off island. Is it going to be, and I don't think we know yet, is it going to be impossible for them to come here if our off-island prices are is that much higher than locals? And then we have to find a middle ground and talk about that, but that's a separate discussion. I would like to see this person in the first. I basically started to think of the job description and in the first month to introduce herself or himself to everybody on the island and all the off-island production companies, sending some sort of a letter out to all the community groups, talking about membership and benefits, getting a list of grants and materials collected, figuring out forms for timekeeping, reporting to the community and the production checklist, and then working on developing the calendar. And the more that I thought about the calendar is if the part that's going to be co-producing is needing that income, that's going to be their main focus. And that's in competition with the local production companies, whether it's the theater companies or the choirs or the anybody else that might be using the space. So I think that we need to think about adjusting priorities on the calendar. And if there was X number of dates set aside for local production, X number of dates set aside for potentially the muni or the rec one, and that the remainder be the ones that the hearth has open access to filling and possibly outside commercial interest. So that would then, if we could prioritize that way, that would solve the hearth trying to do off-island co-productions that bring in reasonable income, taking over the interest and sort of filling the calendar and bumping all of the local interests. So that's one thing that I think we need to try and look at. So the box office, the concession, I don't know. I've never been able to make a lot of money on concession, but there's a little bit, and there has to be time spent in terms of figuring out how to best report. And then I don't know if you've got funding and touring groups coming in, but then the next 6 to 12 months of the person's time when we get into these co-productions to figure out all the time and effort that's put into that, so that we've got some sort of an idea as we go into the second year of funding, whether or not this business model will work. So that's as far as I got. That makes sense?
I have a question to, before Kim has a question too.
Oh, let's go for you for first person. Okay.
I had a question I wanted to maybe understand a little bit better about the ticket sales. Now, I understand that the Hearth was potentially investing in their own ticket sales module or something, so that could be a thing. But in the meantime, I'm gonna say as a user and as a attender at presentations, I love Eventbrite. I love being able to purchase a ticket on my phone, and there's a cost to that. Like, I understand that I understand the credit cards get processed and there's charges associated with that. Like any other online registration, there's gonna be that cost to it. So I wonder if that's as big an issue that you've identified, like having that 10% overhead cost on the sales tickets that you lose because you're accessing a really convenient technology to sell your tickets.
Well, we just used Eventbrite for Dancing at Lewis. And yes, it's easy to buy the tickets. And I don't know if we ever want to get into numbered seats. I hope not,
Right.
but
I understand it doesn't accommodate seats.
I haven't been paid yet for, and it's working out of New York or California, someplace in the States. And so they take the ticket sales and their commission and they hold on to it until, good 2 weeks after the performance. And it's for people that need the money, to pay for all of their expenses. I think that's especially small. Tony doesn't necessarily need the money, but it's in terms of just getting it wrapped up and doing the accounting. I'd really like to be paid, and I don't understand why it takes so long for them. It's to their advantage. So I would much rather use if the Hearth had the similar system where you could use your credit card, it could be on your phone, it would be, right identical kind of system, it seems to me. I don't know if that's available at Square. It isn't at this point, I don't think, but set something up so that they just take that business. Now, I don't have to use Eventbrite or, sign a contract with them. And I mean, they've upped their requirements now so that, we all had to sign declarations that we were directors and what our addresses and phone numbers were and all this kind of stuff. So sell the tickets, give me the money. So it's, if we can keep it local, and this is something that the Hearth can do, then that makes sense. And I think everybody would buy into it. Certainly the pharmacy and the Phoenix would prefer that.
Well, if we want to sell tickets to off-island people who aren't available between them to
Yeah.
buy a ticket from the
Yeah.
pharmacy, it's not really an option, so.
Yeah, definitely.
Kim, you had your hand up. You're on mute.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Judy. I'd just like to reinforce the fundamental principle that the idea behind Gail's proposal is leverage. And the leverage is to not only leverage the federal government and the provincial government into supporting the performing arts programming there, but it also opens the door for certain kinds of sponsorship. Now, in order for that to happen, the venue has to be branded other than a roadhouse. So while it's important to talk about ticket pricing and it's important to talk about services, these services can be offered through a roadhouse independently by each per user group wanting to arrange it. And if that becomes the way that this venue runs, it will be ineligible for government funding, right? And so what Gail's proposal is, by adding in a curation model, it opens up the door for this funding. And based on just the response for the initial programming that happened there, I think it puts the community center, the performing arts part of the community center, in a really good light in relationship both to the BC government and Heritage Canada to get into an operating program to be supported for the programming that's happened here. And while I know the municipality has got concerns that they'll be on the hook past the seed money, I do think that it is like a commitment of a year and a half or 2 years of seed money is very substantial, because remember that the Hearth is also funded as an organization by the municipality. And so I just don't want to get waded into the weeds too much on what this position is actually going to do and what responsibilities they're going to take. Because from my perspective, the purpose of this is to create a position that is going to show a commitment that the direction that the programming is going into is going to make it eligible for these funds. And that it's not as a big of a risk as you might think, because it's a trajectory that many communities go on in terms of developing a place where they've got a curated programming that's being done through a building that's owned by the city that receives ongoing funding from Canadian Heritage. And just one other point, which is about the criteria on these programmings. It was your question, Judy, about does the money, for example, from the provincial program go just towards paying the artist's fees, or does it help with administration? Well, in my experience, money is like water. You get your earned revenue from your ticket prices, it all flows together. And yes, they require that half of this money, like a 50% subsidy, would go towards half of the fees by that artist. But therefore, the box office revenue that would have gone to the artist goes to administration, right? So a lot of those programs are like that. So when you're working on your budget, you look at it holistically. So it means that any grant you get goes towards the overall cost of what the presentation is. And while they do have strings attached that this has to go towards a performance fee, this has to go towards a specific thing, you're looking at the budget holistically, and every little bit helps. And I know with Canadian Heritage, they actually specifically focus in on the money going towards administration and marketing costs, right? So they're a little bit more freer with that. So that's why I'm very supportive of what the idea behind this role is, because it's a step that we're at a crossroads with the beginning of this center, like this performance center, to see if we can put it into the box of where it receives government subsidy. And one last thing is the magic ratio is usually 1/3 public funding, 1/3 ticket revenues, and 1/3 through sponsorship and private donation, right? And so the municipality is already contributing through the Hearth and has shown goodwill. So that third is in place. What's not quite in place are some of the other levels of government, being the provincial and the federal level. And we've also seen a robust support through ticket sales. And the other area that hasn't been explored is through private funding, which we have a little bit through the foundation, but also through sponsorship. So I do agree with Judy that that area is something that needs to be developed, and that this position could possibly be the beginning of that.
Yeah.
I don't understand the difference between curatorial and roadhouse.
Can I take that one on?
Please.
So curatorial means that there's some sort of there's some decision-making of how things, did you want to do that? I'm sorry. Kim? Oh, you were just unmuting, got it.
Continue yourself, yeah.
I mean, muting. So a roadhouse.
And I was just unmuting, and so I could see me.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I just didn't want to interrupt you. So curatorial is like you're doing some kind of gatekeeping. You're thinking about what works well in the season and what doesn't kind of step on top of a show that's already up, that's already in the schedule, so that you're looking at the season more holistically, making sure that there's a good representation of different disciplines, local and off-island, professional and community. So you're really kind of looking at it and making sure that some of the boxes that are priorities within your community are being presented. A roadhouse is open for business. First one in, they book 17 dates in January, all 17 are theirs. So no question asked. It's money talks, and it's the first dollar that gets put down is the one that will be presented. And so Roadhouse has no curation, it's just a business. It's a space that's open for business.
And how would you demonstrate that you're doing curatorial work to provide this?
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, that is what this proposal is based on, a curatorial model, which is why Kim used that term. The space is available for many types of groups to rent. And so the self-present allows that to happen in that sort of Roadhouse model. But the Hearth is programming some shows, 10 a year. We have 9 to 10 a year. And we had said that from our commitment right from the get-go when there was a committee of under Kim, of what are the shows that are going to happen in this center as we look into the future. And then Hearth said, we think we can build up to 9 shows a year. And it's actually already built up to 9 for next year, which is exciting. And those are ones that we're bringing from off island that we can get government support for. It's usually one night. So they're not like 4-night runs, like local community shows where you can pull an audience for 4 nights. And, congratulations on 4 excellent shows. Like you had strong ticket sales for 4 shows. That's amazing. So then thinking in a curatorial model, the Hearth might have 10 shows. Then we look at all these other shows and how those shows are being placed through the year. We already sort of know because they were given to us, and we would want to keep that process of like hearing what the big asks are from the community, making sure they're slotted in. And then when we're putting dates on the calendar, we're fairly aware. But once our dates are in, because we've signed contracts, others would have to work around those. And that's what this programmer or curator can kind of keep track of as well. Then there's going to be offers out the wazoo. I cannot keep up. Guys, we are getting 2 to 4 a week. So introducing ourselves broadly to outside of Bowen Island right now is a mistake. We do not want to do that. That's what he means about curation. If we were to start introducing ourselves to all the presenters and production houses in Vancouver, every single weekend would be full in 2 years. It's unbelievable what's happening right now. Everyone is finding out about this theater. Everybody wants in because they can go from Vancouver to Surrey and then to Bowen Island and then leave, right? So everyone is interested and is writing us, and we're like, slow down. We cannot put co-presentations all over the place yet. We don't have our systems in place, and we're still getting approvals for staffing to do that. So now we're still into this curatorial model. So you've got your community groups.
Can I just clarify
Yeah.
one thing that you said?
Yeah.
So under the Roadhouse Open for Business model, when I read the working document, the proposal, I see a self-presented, I see a co-presentation, and in my mind, the language I used is a co-presentation has a lot of value-added services.
Yes.
Does a Roadhouse model preclude any value-added services?
No, it does not preclude it. It actually can. They might have 4 staff people. One of them is administration. One of them is box office, head of box office.
Sorry, value-added services that we are providing them. So a Roadhouse is just, okay, it's open for business, you figure it out.
A Roadhouse,
It's self-presented, always.
In our case, yes, some roadhouses would have every value added available. They're just not curating. They'll do your ticket sales.
They'll
They'll
do their own ticket sales.
No, the theater will do the ticket sales for every incoming artist, but you're paying for every single thing you do. You're paying for the theater, you're paying for the, for the ticket sales. So yes, the ticket, those added, value added might be in a roadhouse. But that is not necessarily the model that we're proposing for this aspect of, for this theater,
Okay.
because we don't own the theater. So if it's okay, I'll just, I actually can try to answer that question better, Kristen, I'm sorry. But let me just go back to the curatorial for a sec, because my mind is there still. The co-presents is probably the one that dovetails, integrates Roadhouse and curation the best. So we've now got some hearth shows, we've got some community shows, and now we start to look at what are the open dates available. That's where the co-present might work, is the most effective aspect of the model. Is that then we would say, okay, guys, we have this many shows over the course of this month. We think we shouldn't exceed this many shows in a month. We think that. And so let's choose among the offers that are coming to us as co-presentations. Let's make it, and then we need some guidelines. How many are local? How many are off island? Do we prioritize local ones first? And then if there aren't any, then we go to off island ones? Or do we do the opposite? I mean, that's the next level of decision making. I was only coming to you saying, can we charge for fees? Can we charge fees or percentages for some of these these value add-on things? That was my big question. And that's the answer to the curation thing. Do you mind if I was to then take a step into just a comment about some of the things that Judy, you were saying? I felt that I heard sort of two conflicting ideologies going on in what you were saying. And I just want to point them out just for discussion's sake. On the one hand, we want to be able to say we're going to maximize, what was the term you said at the beginning? That we want to make sure we're maximizing business for return for the dollar spent by the municipality towards this position. That is a statement that could be true. And we could say that's going to be our truth. But if we do that, then we are going to be putting shows everywhere on top of and creating competition for every show on that's happening in the theater. Because we could put shows in there 5 days a week. And then what happens to ticket sales for everyone? It gets quite diluted. So I'm not sure, it might be good for the municipality, but it might not be good for the presenters, whether they're local or off island, the artists or the production houses. I also heard you say that we want to make sure that we have a process in place that protects, the success of local shows. And I agree with that one, actually. I just want to point out, they actually are two competing ideologies. And I would like to just come on record and saying I support the second one, that we should not be maximizing every potential booking in the theater if we want shows to do well. But we can look at it a different way. I just don't think that, I'm not sure it's successful. I don't think it's going to be a successful model.
Well, is it not a blend of the curatorial then, so that if there is enough business to fill every single night, all week long, all year long, then it would be the curatorial model in terms of, we can't have Shakespeare 6 times a year, whether it's on island or off island. There's just no audience for it, and we can't have, the philosophy club, or we can't have, the curatorial function, it seems to me, would be some sort of a balance between figuring out, there's all sorts of stuff that we can fill the theater with that is, of interest to different audiences that we're not hitting right now. We've got programs for families and programs for teens and programs for seniors that, are starting to come up in terms of some of the things that Sky wanted to do, for instance, or some of the things that, I don't know, out there, but, if somebody's trying to figure out, let's expand the experience, let's get more people in a diverse audience and, keep the theater as busy as possible. And I mean, there's gonna be limits in terms of, I don't think we can run that space 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. There's gotta be maintenance, and there's gotta be time in between in terms of setting it right and all that. That's the calendar stuff. I mean, we did this year with Dancing at Lunasa, we got the set out so that, that we could have Ian Parker in there. But I mean, that was pretty tight. So we might have to calendar things so that we make sure that there's enough time in between. And that's finessing it, that's fine point. But if Tony coming in with our own production and not necessarily wanting to have a co-production and give up 50% of the gate, but wanting to buy fee for service, then yes, if it's a mixed model between Roadhouse and curatorial, and the Hearth takes into account that what we're trying to do is a comedy or, a tragedy or whatever, something that is a little bit, pushing some envelope someplace. We tried to do Hitler's Women one time from the Fringe Festival, and we couldn't get, the Legion wouldn't rent us their space, right? So there's going to be some edgy productions that, somebody might want to say no to. And is that going to be the Hearth? Is that going to be, some sort of a policy from the Muni? I don't know that we've come up against those kinds of problems, but I don't know that I want the Hearth to say, no, you can't do that to a Tony production, right? And we've had not conflicts, but problems in terms of, and I think it might have been with Rec in terms of, we had 2 weekends in a row in February, and there was Halloween.
The Halloween, yeah.
And there was some dance that that Rec was thinking of that was sort of right in the middle of.
Well, Halloween dance doesn't have a lot of flexibility in
Yeah.
timing.
But I think our one the weekend before and the weekend after.
And I think you adjusted a little bit
Yeah.
so that we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the curatorial interest there in terms of saying no. And that's I think when we get into hard spots.
I'm sorry, Kim's had his hand up for quite a while here. Kim?
That's okay. I just had raised it and I didn't realize it recognized it. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I just having seems to be an unstable internet connection. I just want to clarify a couple of things. Because of the curatorial model in order to access federal funding, it's not an either or situation when it comes to having other kinds of programming in there, including local community programming that isn't curated. They understand the need for that and that model. So within the provision of it, they allow that kind of programming to happen as well. So it's not like the person who's curating the performances that are going on in the venue are controlling all of the stuff that goes on there. I mean, you just have to look at the K-Meek as an example because it's in a partnership with the West Van School District. So there's all kinds of stuff that goes on in the K-Meek Theater that isn't curated, but they do have a part of it that is curated, which allows them to access this funding. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not an either or situation between a Roadhouse and a curated program that's subsidized. They're also focusing in on the activity. So what they do is they support a certain kind of activity and give you grants in order to underwrite those costs. right? And that is, I think, what's fundamentally that we're talking about. And you can get into the weeds a bit about how it's going to work out. But I think the general principle of it is that by initiating this kind of programming in the space, we're opening the door to receive that kind of funding. And the only other comment I would make is that they to try and dictate uh, programming through policy is really, really, really difficult. I was racking my brain to think of an example across the country of a venue that was built and owned by the city that somehow was able to control programming through municipal policy or building policy. Generally, it doesn't work. We did a lot of work in the policy area, and we've done an excellent job in that area about, making sure it's, nobody's doing anything illegal, that like all that kind of stuff. But when it comes into content, artistic content, that's actually when you switch into something that's more of a curatorial model. And so what I think is behind this, in my view, from my understanding of it, is it's more like this curated programming is sitting inside a larger envelope that the municipality has built, which allows the community and other groups to access the space. And the purpose for that is to open the door for other levels of government funding that specifically are for that. And it's coming from programs that understand very well how the community is served by performing arts, right? And I just think that sometimes people feel it's either or, that community-based groups like Toady or choirs are somehow not supported or not part of that, but it's actually the opposite. I know this because of running at Presentation House Theatre, where we host every year. We have the North Shore Zone Festival, which brings community theater companies in place. We've had local choirs. We have the North Shore Light Opera Society, which is another music community-based group. And we're actually applauded and supported by Canadian Heritage by having that program going in our space. So it's because we contextualize it, they see the importance and the value of it. But in addition to that, we also have this other programming. And so I just want to make sure that we don't see it as an either or, because it really isn't. It's more holistic.
I just wanted to follow up on what you had said, Gail, about one of the objectives of bringing this to the committee was to get a sense of how we all feel about the fee for service. And so I wanted that's a concrete piece that I think we can address really easily. And because I'm not hearing opposition to that in any way. So I just kind of wanted to get that on the table, that it is something that I think I'm hearing the JMC is supporting on the whole. So just in terms of having one of our concrete objectives met here. So in terms of those additional services, front of house or service elements.
I would agree with you, Gillian. I think that like this presentation model, I think to me, this all makes good sense. There's one thing that went through it and then did some thinking about it. What I would like to work on, and I think it's probably best to kind of break out into a smaller group, work on it, and bring it back rather than try and get a larger group to do it. But to understand what that basic level of service is for anybody who's coming in. So we had talked earlier, a couple of weeks ago, we had talked about the website, and is it reasonable to expect that any production that's going on in the theater should get their production advertised on the website? So I think yes, I think maybe you thought, okay, but it wasn't like initially, yeah, they should go on the, like, I think that what it would be really helpful for us to find some common ground as to what that basic level of service that anybody coming in, self-presenting, co-presenting is gonna get from this, I'll call it position.
Yep.
and to define them.
Yeah.
And then all of the others are add-on value add on top of that.
Yep.
And then there's one more thing that I did want to bring up, because I don't know that everybody, again, has the same expectation. But the concept, and I wonder if you could help me understand why it should be that off-island artists get the locals price,
Oh,
or what people's thoughts are about that.
when I spoke of that last week, what I was saying is that if the Hearth takes on a show as a co-presents, then I think that they would get a locals price, and that's one of the reasons why they would do it under the Hearth, because a group comes from off island, they have no connection to the community, so they don't know how to tell, how to reach an audience here. And so they have a motivation to work with a local presenter. And the Hearth would be taking a portion of their ticket sale revenue after hard expenses. And that would go directly towards paying for this staffing for the theater. And I think that's the rationale, is that if we're not giving them that benefit, we're gonna lose probably a lot of those shows. But if you think that we should not do that, I mean, to be honest, I don't actually have a very strong opinion on that. I think that if the Hearth takes it under their co-presents, we could argue that it makes sense. And if the argument is that it doesn't, I could see an argument made in either direction on that. I'm not gonna, certainly not gonna define my position based on that. Let's just hold off on getting too in the weeds on that one. Kim, I'm not sure we want to go down that discussion road too quickly.
Yeah, also keeping in mind, we're at 5:37 right now.
Yeah,
so-
let's, I think what we
Yeah,
need
left
to,
it.
so does that help you? I mean, because we could have that discussion and we could do it after we've approved this stuff, like, I don't work.
Yeah, absolutely. I still think this is still to me a very conceptual document.
Yeah,
And if we're just looking for consensus among the group that we agree with the concept, then I think that we just need to take it back and tighten it up a little bit more and not quite approve anything just yet. So, but conceptually, I agree with this model and I would support it.
all I wanted was an agreement that the collecting money from productions for fee for service or in a co-presentation split of the door after hard expenses was a principle that, and thank you, Jillian, for just saying, I think we agree on that.
Yeah.
And that was what I brought it to the committee last week to do.
Yeah.
And if we have that, then we can move to the next level of actually developing the job description.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did have one thing, if it's okay, Chair.
Sorry, just Kim, you had a hand up earlier, but it's gone now. Do you have anything?
I did want to respond to something that was said about curating and what does it mean to curate related to the Halloween dance and the use of the theater for the Halloween dance and its conflict with a theater production. I do not see that as part of the job of this in the purview of this job. I just wanted to become clear that we're curating art performances. We're not curating every recreational or private function or whatever in the space. If that's not clear, then I don't think we have a good basis of understanding of this position, and I think we need to start again. I do mean that. I would not get involved in that discussion. I would ask that the discussion that did happen between Tody and BIM, Recreation Department, happened. That is the appropriate place for that to happen. We are only dealing with activities in the theater that are performing arts related. This position, yes.
Seems reasonable.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a discussion if it's a co-presentation and.
Then the Hearth would be having the discussion with Recreation and trying to sort out dates, because the Hearth would be kind of the presenter. And so we would be in discussion and be like, hi, you guys have any flex? No, you don't. Okay, so then we need to go back and kind of figure out a different date availability. But we were not the presenter in that. We're not involved as a co-presenter. If we were brought on for ticket sales as a fee for service, again, we would not be a co-presenter. We would just be providing an interface for your ticket sales at a fee.
I don't think I was suggesting that the Hearth be given.
Yeah, I think to that point, it was more that there are those conversations between this booking production and program coordinator and everybody else to make sure that we're all melding, that we've got space for everybody, that we're working through issues that come up as we go to see how we figure that out. And not necessarily you curating like a concert that was coming here as a band wanting to do their own thing and didn't want a co-production, but that you wouldn't have a classical concert right after somebody else's classical concert, perhaps the next day, and stealing perhaps a bit of that. That's what we need. How can we as a group figure the best way to work all of this out?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky.
I really value that statement, and I think that's exactly why we need a programming coordinator with a process in place. Right now, fortunately, it just happened today, our live arts coordinator, the 5-month position is more Mo, and Mo approached Sienna to see if there was a way that she could share the program, the calendar on a fairly regular basis so that we could disseminate it and make sure that there was some information exchange. And that's what we've been waiting for a long time, because there's been a lot of push for a calendar. But the Hearth only knows very few things. We know the Toady Productions, King Baby Productions, and Bard Productions, and our own Hearth Presents, but we don't know what choirs are up to. And so we've been waiting for process to begin. And it's always been the seeming resistance from the Hearth to hear what other groups are doing and accommodate them. It's actually not, that's not my interpretation. My interpretation is a process is evolving right now, and we're trying really hard to get to that level of evolution. And this booking coordinator is a component of that process.
So I'll update you on that. So today she figured out how to create access just into seeing the monthly calendar in the theater. So you'll be able to log in and see it yourself. In ActiveNet. Yeah. So Toady will be able to do that as well. To be able to see, so you don't have to say, oh, I'd like this date or that date. You can actually see what's going on.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That is really good.
Yeah.
Even someone interested in having a production, they could look at this calendar.
We wouldn't be giving out that login information to everybody.
But if someone were interested in looking at a calendar of events and they think, okay, when can I look and see? Is there some manner of having that available on the website eventually so that, or do they need to fill in an application and then talk to a booking manager to find that out?
I think this is where we're identifying like who would they go to speak to, and so the coordinator, the P&P coordinator would have access into that calendar, right? So I don't think it shows up on the website, no, but if there is a Bowen Theatre website that has the productions being listed, that's another source of information as well. That's for what's already scheduled. Yeah.
So there's 2 or 3 steps in terms of getting something noted on a calendar, in terms of holding the date, and then having the deposit made, and then paying the fees. Right?
There's a lot of steps.
Yeah, those are the 3 main. And there's all the, figuring out all the details in terms of which room and for how long and how much care to it, how much staffing and all this kind of stuff. So, but we have gone to Sienna and said, put our names down on these dates. I don't know that we've paid a deposit for that. That's very
For October,
small.
yeah.
And then that's when we start talking in terms of something else has come up and your name is already in this slot. Can we adjust it? And then when we solidify it, pay the formal deposit, which is I think half of the final rental cost. That is basically our solid, unless there's another COVID epidemic or something. That's when we're we're booking it and we're committed to it and we lose the deposit if we change it and stuff like that, and then we have to 30 days before the proposal or some time limit before the proposal, we have to actually have finished paying for everything. So that's the other thing in terms of small independent companies, whether or not they've got that kind of income coming from. And that was the other thing that is that something that, you know, paying the theater rental and paying licensing fees and reconciling hard costs and paying the artist at the end, is that something that Garth is thinking of helping with?
You know, is it okay to speak?
Yeah, just
know.
correct that and then we'll go to Kim after.
We're trying to move forward with being able to develop this fully, right, under a staffing we need a staff person to really be able to dig into this. But that is one of the goals that I had for co-presentations for local artists, is that I already heard from some local groups that being able to pay the fee 15 days out before receiving any ticket revenue, they don't have any cash flow. And so that was one of my hopes, was that as a in offering co-presentation, the Hearth might be able to pay the deposit, then take in the ticket revenue to do the reconciling and then pay out to the artist. And that might be a really, really huge benefit to local smaller producers, art producers. It's an objective. And I cannot make that statement because I don't know if the Hearth has enough money, cash flow, to do that for every show that's going to come to us once they hear that is true. So curation is based on many things, from scheduling to quality of art and to things like how many deposits can we cover before getting reconciled.
Kim.
Just doing that so you can hear me. I just want to clarify because I have to leave. Do we need to be approve this job description at this committee level in order for the Hearth to make a post on it? Because I think what we're doing is we're going into kind of quite a bit of detail in the job description, what it may or may not cover. But what I'm generally been hearing is that we're in support of the position generally, and that do we need to be able to figure out all the details of exactly what they're going to be doing and how it's going to work before we authorize the Hearth to be able to post the position and start the process of making the hire? And is it something, at what point does it have to go in front of council? Because that was the purpose of this meeting. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I actually have to leave in a couple of minutes. And if we're going to vote on something, I just wanted to know if we have to do it like at this meeting.
Sorry.
So to answer your question, Kim, I've drafted a service agreement, which will be the agreement between council and the board of the Hearth. So that will authorize the Hearth to go out and start to recruit for this position. That agreement states that the job description or what the person's going to do is going to be approved by this group. So we don't need to do this today, and in fact, I think it still needs a little bit of work. But like I said, I think it's probably better to create a working group to advance that. But I believe that conceptually, if the group is in support of the concept, I think that is enough to give the working group the assurance to go forward to bring back a final job description that this committee could support.
Is that the motion?
It's
No, we don't need it.
The motion, I believe that's the very final 2 pages of the package. Is that correct? Whereas the production program coordinator is needed to work in collaboration. It's the large font at the very end. Is that the proposed one that we were thinking of now?
There's one
Or
on the
it's not
agenda.
what you were suggesting just now, Kristen?
There's a proposed motion on the agenda, which I
Right.
think is not quite ready. I don't think it's quite ready to approve the proposed job description. But it's safe that the committee supports in principle the funding model, something like that?
Gail, I'd like your input on that, if possible.
Yeah, I think it would be wonderful if we could approve the funding model and defer to a working group comprised of staff from the Hearth, staff from BIM and a delegation from the Hearth to draft the job description based on that.
For approval back here at the JMC.
I think that we're going to be moving through too many steps to get this job hired. I am becoming very fearful of stepping through so many hoops to get here. I would rather the working group represent enough voices from this JMC to be able to draft the job description.
What does council need?
The agreement does require approval of this committee.
Can we pre-approve it before the final draft is made?
We approve the job description?
That if the working group goes to task to create the job description, can we now go ahead and approve that what they do is successful? We'll approve it.
I don't know if I vote on that.
I don't think I would vote on.
Even based on what is,
No, I-
even based on what is already presented,
I think it's close.
it's pretty close. In my estimation, it seems like it's 90% there. So we would be approving that the next 10% would be.
Yeah, we could do that perhaps by email poll and then get it
It's just an idea.
I
and ratify it at the next meeting. Do that.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, everyone. I have to go because I'm actually about to be in another meeting. And I just agree, if you do come to a vote, I will support any motion that does move this forward. I think you're very, very close, either to come up with a motion that will approve the subcommittee to do the fine details in it. I think, of course, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make it functional, but I think everyone agrees in principle. I'm terribly sorry. I do have to go. I've got people shouting at me on the side.
Thank you, Kim. Is this too much?
Yeah, way too much.
Okay.
I think just conceptually.
Okay, so I'll just say the, okay,
Am I blocking here?
support and principle,
Yeah.
the presentation and funding models.
Yeah.
That's good. And not seeing the job description this time. I'll say, as presented in, I'll date the document. And then you want to say, and supports the subcommittee going ahead and looking up the job description?
Yeah. To finalize the job description.
But then if that job description still would have to come back to us for approval to go to council. I know that's.
It doesn't go to council.
Sorry,
It
it
just needs to be approved.
just needs to be approved.
Yeah.
PC job description.
Yeah, that's weird.
Is it?
Yeah.
That this CCJMC support principle presentation funding process presented and CCJMC supports the subcommittee working on finalizing job. Yeah, and that's, you see that, G?
Yeah.
So we would have the subcommittee meet, draft it, bring it back to us. We're good to go, then you guys can launch. Essentially is what we're works.
Yes,
For
and
clarity.
currently,
Yeah.
there will be a process where the service agreement is going to be signed between the park board and council. So that will happen concurrently outside of this.
Hi,
Nothing
nothing?
Well, now it comes
Ooh. The, what is it called, job description subcommittee?
Please,
Right?
a subcommittee to work. Maybe doing what else like the members. of the-
Oh, yeah. Rising. I think you seem enthusiastic about this.
Well, we've done a lot of work on it already, between Jillian and myself and Gail. And then is there somebody else that should support that work or? Is that,
I think I'm maybe tapped out in terms of the amount of stuff I can take on, but everybody else.
Need some more help? You know?
the smaller we keep the group, the easier it is to accommodate schedules for people and stuff.
I would not see that, but.
Sorry, maybe have her name up. Or-
If you want, I don't know if it's helpful to have another person, maybe.
I think what Kristen was saying is for the sake of time, if we have less numbers, it's easier to get together. But I'd be happy to meet with you, Julie, if you had thoughts.
And when it's being emailed out.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, that's weird. Right.
Okay, any
Right, also great.
any comments or concerns on this?
Just the stuff that we're consistently hearing from the other data groups, voting on the numbers. in terms of getting overwhelmed and offline. So,
Not getting overwhelmed by all island people, is that what you said? Yeah, it's so interesting. I keep trying to espouse that same position, and yet I keep feeling that I'm hearing a different message. So it's so interesting. I like to hear you say that more concretely, because I would like to limit some of the amount of off-island to a reasonable level. And I don't think that's consistent with maximizing return on every booking opportunity possible. So I would love to have that somehow. For me, what feels like missed message, I would love to be able to have that more concretely stated. Maybe there's a certain number of shows per month. Sounds reasonable to me.
I don't think it's this conversation though.
Yeah, another conversation.
Funding model, job description and,
6 o'clock here.
do we have a mover and seconder?
sorry, what do you want?
A mover or seconder, is it been moved? Want to vote?
So how do we do this?
So, yes, for a mover, can I have
Okay,
someone move?
can I have somebody move?
Oh.
Jillian,
Yes. You get a chance. Oh,
can we have a seconder?
me.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
Any more discussion? Thank you. Okay, call the vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed?
Okay, what he's not gonna be included. I think he was just letting us know.
Okay, yeah, I don't know how that works for
He was just letting us know.
whatever perspective. Okay,
Not be mad.
okay, thank you very much. We move on to 4.1, which is rental policy revision subcommittee update, which we met this week. Let's leave this off. You want to? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, if you want me to, I can, if you're willing, I'll just give the 3 or 4 points that were given by the booking manager. And Lee and Fraser, when I'm done, if you want to correct or add anything extra. So the booking manager, we had a meeting regarding policy, but we also had a bit of a catch up for what it's been like so far. Demand is very high in terms of lots of groups wanting to book. She also shared the feedback that groups are having a hard time, some with the deposit amounts before ticket sales, which was already mentioned. But that was number 1 thing. And number 2, there was a bit of confusion around how to define the groups. The community groups, local community, commercial and private, that sometimes even groups wanted to shift and become another type of group that everybody, of course, wants the lower rate. So that was a number 2 topic that was discussed. And number 3 was about the future role of the JMC, because of future decision makings that regarding categories that are a bit gray, and also the process that might be related in having to wait for JMC meetings and approval, or whether to go ahead and do the bookings. And this reflects back to the discussion that we just had, rather regarding curatorial or roadhouse, how to make those decisions. So that was the number 3 topic. And then also, and then the role for the JMC, that it might come up in the future, the mechanism for the use of the space for free. If there were groups that would come forward that might need the space for free. That hasn't come up yet, but it's hypothetical. And then the number 4 topic that we, as a group, the JMC might want to discuss in terms of the policy is how to differentiate between performance and non-performance. And that's where the booking manager consistently, like right now, is actually having a difficult time differentiating between, and here are 5 or 6 that are live that she's waiting to decide upon. She doesn't quite know which category to put them in. Movie, comedy show, writers meetup, book reading, and individual performance. And then also the use of the space with just acoustics and the lights. So all of these were bringing in some question. And of course, again, everybody wants the space for the cheaper rate. And it's about half as much. So that's what was discussed. And the gray areas were so gray, the 3 of us and the booking manager could not come up with something consistent that we decided we could change it to and then bring to the JMC and say, yes, can we change it to this? It was so gray, didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
That's it.
So one of the, it was a very excellent discussion, a lot of talking, similar to when we were just first making all these decisions too, actually.
Yes.
We're really just been right back to it. And
It's square one.
refer to it, however, we talk around in circles and circles and circles and circles. One of the things that was helpful though was it was for booking manager to know what a community, who is in the community group, right? As opposed to a private renter or a commercial renter. And essentially going back to how you brought up last week is it basically we would need to either reword or reinterpret what we think of as a group. So if it could be a group or an ad hoc group, or it could be an individual that still provides services or programming to the community members of Bowen Island, the arts-based, culturally significant, performance-based, recreational, environmental societies, or organizations or other groups on Bowen Island for Bowen Island residents. Right? So that could be a group like Toady. It could be a single person putting on a one-person show. As long as they're Bowen-based, live on Bowen and are providing something for people on Bowen. Does that make sense? We thought that made sense.
This is the one thing we pretty much agree
Yeah,
on.
this was one of the only things that we, you know, it doesn't actually rewrite the policy as much as reinterpret the policy. If we're comfortable, and we were comfortable going forward with that and bringing that to the group here, if there was any discussion we had around that. The other thing would be like, what is a commercial renter and what activities would make you a commercial over a community group, such as a local business doing something. And in the end, it would be something that are you know, arts-based, culturally, like it's already written. If you're not one of these things in the community group, like providing culturally significant things, performance-based things, recreational, environmental, then you would end up being commercial. It would probably be a very, very tiny sliver of the rentals. But it seemed to make the most sense, and it would really clarify a lot of things for booking for a lot of other people, especially for booking. Question.
So does that put a for-profit business in the same category as an individual if it's doing it for community?
Depending on what they were doing, is what we thought.
So where you get into curation.
So
Yeah, see, to me, that doesn't really align with the initial.
if they're doing
intent.
this, something that is performance-based or recreational or culturally significant or arts-based, right? If they were doing something that was open to the public, that was one of those things, couldn't a for-profit, because it isn't, like there are some theater companies on island that are not registered non-profits.
Yeah, that wasn't my understanding of the original intention of that user group definition.
That it would be like.
That, you know, if it is a commercial business putting on a production, selling high ticket prices, that they're paying that commercial rate.
If they're Bowen-based, if they're not Bowen-based.
Right, because we had,
Yeah, it's local or off-island or commercial or.
but it was about the group versus commercial, and then it was within that, were they Bowen-based or not, right? So, yeah, I think that's an interesting slight evolution of the intention.
Sorry, you know.
Just maybe we could put the Kelly Kono Dance Studio into the middle of the room and say, how would we define Kelly Kono's recital? Is that commercial or is that a nonprofit organization putting on a culturally significant? I don't have an answer. I'm just saying that might be an interesting model.
After our conversation, my inclination, I think we would say it would be a community group because Kelly provides a service to the community. It's performance-based, it's culturally significant to the island. I agree.
What's an example of the opposite of that?
So say one of the cideries wants to do a cider fest.
That's a
And-
community event.
They're selling cider or doing it?
But is it performance-based or arts-based, culturally significant?
Probably debatable.
That's, all of these are debatable. They are,
They are.
a bunch of them, and many of them are gray. And the meeting I felt was significant because we wanted to relay also to the booking manager that she's not alone in this, that she had our support in having us listen and discuss the gray areas, and that we were coming back to you to discuss as well. And so that to me was one of the salient parts of our meeting, was for her to understand she doesn't need to make those decisions on her own, and that so again, we go back to the question, what is the role of the JMC? What is the mechanism for making these decisions? These are 5 or 6 that are waiting, emails that are waiting for her.
But that is also not our responsibility as a GMC to be micromanaging.
Right, so where do we
Job.
go with that now? And this is a live decision this week and next week. Again, the list was movies, comedy show, writers meetup, book reading, individual
So
performance.
I think that's slightly different though, that's a different.
That was the list
That's
she
a
gave me, or
different-
the 5 or 6 that are
Right, but
waiting.
not, I think we were talking about something different,
Okay.
when we're talking about community groups, that's a
Right.
different.
That was the fee.
A different conversation about like how fees for what you're doing in the space. Whereas this was about who gets that community rate.
I don't think you can always discount a private corporation saying you would get a community rate. I think the Kelly Cono example is a really good example. I think it's what is the motive of putting this on? Is it to earn additional profit? Is it to do more marketing to eventually earn more profit? Is that why you're doing it? It's kind of gotta get a sense of what the purpose of
But we
putting
would
on
never, we're not asking that sort of
Yeah.
thing. We're not asking what's your ticket sale price. We're not asking, like, you know, what are your expenses and what's your goal?
And, you know, there are people that do one-person shows and then also have a business that they life coach people, right? And
Yep.
they're not coming to do their life coaching, they're coming to do their one-person show.
They're promoting their.
But there, yeah.
And that's pretty-
But it's culturally significant, arts-based,
Oh,
performative.
Many of those. It's
But yeah.
You don't ask the ticket prices?
So, I mean, maybe it means we have to rebuild this completely and figure out more, because the trouble in the gray is what is difficult.
Yeah.
And the gray is what holds things up.
And
And it also,
consuming.
it's time consuming because people are like, but I'm doing this, this, and this, but I'm doing this, this, and this, right?
Yeah,
And-
no, I do think it's important that it's really clear and she
Yeah.
can answer the questions and be done.
Here's
And it's
some-
not coming back to us for discussion.
Yeah.
Clear.
It's almost like a point system or, you know, so that if there's, she's got a checklist or somebody can say, you know, we wanna do this and this, and this, and this is what. So, but I'm having trouble with this conversation right now without having gone through the policy and, you know, thinking about what's there now. And, you know, I think we should have another, I mean, she can give it her best shot in terms of, you know, some of the things that you've talked about for these things that are outstanding, but it's important, I think, if we are possibly on the cusp of rebuilding the whole thing, that we need to have, you know, some more depth before we discuss it.
Sure. Another thing that came up that was probably the hardest question for us was what is the difference between performance and non-performance? And, you know, we had possibly like gone with the idea that if the seats are out and you're using the booth, that's performance. The trouble is that doesn't always feel right. It doesn't always feel right for a youth film screening. It doesn't feel right for seniors information happening in there and seniors presentations, speaker series like we had from the library that parents.
Vanessa's a point, yeah.
It doesn't feel right for that. But how do you differentiate that too? Like, and so what is the level, what is the line where you're presenting, but you're not performing? Or, yeah, it's really hard, and we talked in circles forever again about this. And it's a really, really gray. Like some things seem,
Grace is terrible
100%.
word now.
like,
Some things are dead simple.
yeah, something is very black and white. It's like Tony, obviously performance, right?
Makeup, script, yeah.
Ticket sales, the booth is on, there are bums in seats, it's a performance. But you can still have people in the seats and it perhaps not be a performance. In certain circumstances, for example, Sky holding their meetings there. Is that a performance rental or a non-performance rental?
Right.
Or if they brought a speaker.
Yeah. Right, they often have to use amplification, they
I
often
got a
have to.
PowerPoint, got a speaker.
Exactly.
Some groups, they need a stage hold. So we talked about that as being a la carte, also different kind of pricing as well.
Yeah, that was another to just, yeah,
We didn't get too deep into that.
yeah. So it's, you know, we all knew, I think we all knew that we would put this policy out and then we'd have to really pick through it. I guess we just did. We didn't totally get through that first year. And we got through the first 2 weeks before it became challenging.
Good news is there's lots of demand.
Yeah.
So what does Sienna do now when she has a conundrum?
She comes to us.
Okay.
And sometimes we can resolve it, sometimes.
Sometimes we contradict ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we're for one thing, we're like,
You
no,
know,
no,
it's
definitely
definitely
this. And then she comes back and we're like, oh,
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then if that's working, if it's working to the extent that it, we can help these people book it, then you're keeping track of the problems and that's what we have to review the policy. So I don't think we stop Sienna. I think that, we try to make the best decision that we can, and if it's coming to you two, that's workable as far as I'm concerned in terms of your best judgment.
Yeah.
And then you can identify the problems and, figure out what it is that we have to work on.
And maybe if you document the reasons why
Yeah.
for your decision to be nonprofit versus commercial or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you'd have that record and you can say, well, we did this last time. Follow and try and be consistent.
And then I think we can try and maybe set up a checklist or something for it that would help. Whatever the problems are, we can identify them and see if we can come up with.
Maybe they have to meet a certain number of criteria
Sure.
in each category, and you
Yeah,
need
12.
5 out of
Yeah.
10 criteria,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah,
So
you have to have,
that's essentially clarifying.
have to have a score of 50 out of 100 before you.
Well, if they're answering the question, they don't know what the result's gonna be, where it's going, so they have to answer honestly all the way down, and then they get to the end, which is let's do this category.
Yeah.
So they can't start wiggling this.
Sure. Yeah,
No?
I mean, I think, no, I agree. No, I'm
Yeah.
not saying you're wrong at all. I think it would certainly make it easier for her. I mean, administratively, it's a little more, but maybe it's worth that time now to put in. The other thought was like, do we, make an application system where a group or a person applies to be a community or applies to be performance or non-performance. If that's another, so like who's responding to those applications, seems like it would be a CCJMC sort of thing, or a subcommittee of that. Yeah, and so it was, so that's also out there too, like that could be another way, where it's not on just the one person saying, sorry, no, I don't think you meet this criteria, or 3 people. It's a representation of the managing body of this space.
In public, on record, possibly.
Yeah.
I just worry about the time frame.
Exactly, that's the hardest challenge. Yeah, it's the turnaround.
And if she were to give someone an answer no or something that they didn't agree with and they said, sorry, I don't agree with that, I need to talk to somebody else, what's that mechanism for that? What's your manager?
Exactly. And then, also we talked about how we don't have a mechanism for not charging for use, right? For First Nations groups, charities, I think we need something for that, because there's certainly people that come that it doesn't feel like it's serving the space to charge them. But we don't have that. And I think that is in other spaces. Maybe the library where somebody has something similar, or?
Well, we also have our policy for rec programs,
Sure.
bursary programs for rec, same thing.
Yeah.
I think we should overcomplicate it, and I think that together make reasonable decisions.
Except for when we got to this out.
But it's not efficient to try and bring it back to a larger community all the time. And
It takes us 2 weeks to
Yeah.
scramble it together
Yeah.
anyways.
it's just, I think if you make the best decision you can using, and just keep a record of why you made that decision.
Well, and maybe in this first year, we also make sure it's really clear to people that, at this time, given the criteria and options that we have, this is how we're categorizing you, but it could be that that's modified down the road. And they may end up being either more expensive or less expensive.
Yeah.
And I do think we still need to talk. I think this subcommittee is not done, and I think having Sienna bring how it is in real life to us is invaluable. So I think it's something we still to maybe build that. We could ask her what are clarifying questions that would make it really clear, and we can build that with her, or we can build it and bring it to her.
Yeah.
But so the update is we're still working on it. 18 months.
And wanted feedback from you as well too, the larger
6
committee
years
as to what
later.
you think, and
Oh,
you're in the
let's-
same boat as
let's-
us, so. Okay. Lee, Bibi, is that okay for us for today?
And unless you have anything else to add,
No, I mean, I'll add on one other thing. It has, again, it's something that Mimi mentioned too. It is tricky for some people to pay the full costs outright at the beginning when ticket sales are the way they're able to do so. We talked about this a lot, and it was noted that, okay, well, what happens if they don't make enough money? Then the municipality is tracking those people down and trying to get payment. And maybe if at some point it becomes a hold the credit card on file type thing, maybe that works, but it's tricky. We get it. So I want to make it clear to the public that we sympathize with that, but right now, we as the subcommittee realize there's no other way to do it. Unfortunately. That hopefully will change.
I'd like to learn a little bit more about how other places handle this, because I
Yeah.
just wonder if that's our responsibility.
So Katie, a good example.
Subsidize,
Yeah, so what they did for us when we took a show to Katie was because we went through their box office, they had all the revenue. So they were able to hold it.
Yeah.
And then paid us out so we would pay a deposit, we didn't pay the full amount up front, and then we got the profit, or we would be charged for the loss if we flopped. And they'd have our card on file, for example. So that's how that worked there. We don't have, the municipality does not have that box office mechanism. So, tricky.
And yeah, when we looked up other spaces, it was pretty similar. It's paid upfront rental.
That's what I thought, it's the risk.
But it's certainly a challenge for smaller companies.
So I think as a group that we need to continue to have that conversation because we do want to support those smaller groups, those private groups, those people that are taking a big risk, doing something for the community, for arts and everything like that as well too. But we need ideas. Okay, we'll continue on. Let's move on to 5.1 new business, other business. Oh, sorry, did we have a 4.2? We did. And I've got to leave in about 7 minutes.
4.2 is still passed.
Yes, thank you.
We reopened the seat pledges as a second intake, and the Hearth has been pushing those seat pledges to contribute to only towards the theater expanding its inventory. And I'm happy to report that we've reached 20,000.
Oh my God.
It's really exciting.
So inventory of what?
The list that was made for the original infrastructure grant is our basis that we're working from. I think the infrastructure grant might have been 25,000, so we might not be at the point of being able to cover every single thing, but there's lighting instruments, there's microphones and cables, there's some support for the green room, the dressing rooms. So we might have to make a selection within that, and but we're not done yet. We might get more, I think, but I think we hit 8 officially. One of them doesn't have a check attached to it, but it does have, the form was filled out. So we trust that will come, but, so I'm not we haven't handed you the check yet, but that's what we said, is that we would intake all of the money and then offer tax receipts to people and then just hand over all of the money to the municipality. And I'm excited to report that.
That's amazing.
We can take one directly too, so there's that to add to it as well.
Yeah, you took the one, I'm including that one.
Okay.
Yeah, because we haven't yet hit 8, we've hit 7, and I'm
Gotcha.
including mine, because it was a nice number.
All right, pushing forward, thank you. New business. Action items.
I have two action items. One is to finalize the job description, Kristen, Gail, and Julian, and then circulate it for vote.
Right.
Last week, there was a donation policy subcommittee action.
We haven't, it's.
But the presentation house did share theirs. So we have a few things to pull from.
Thank you.
It's not rec stuff.
Pardon me?
We need one with rec, like rec stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, it's just
It's a reference.
It's,
Okay, 7 information items. Question period. Anybody here?
Yeah.
Well, do we set the next meeting now or do we circulate that? Once you've got Kim and everybody, let's do it.
You wanna go?
Well, I'd like to move to adjourn. Adjourn.
What do you ask?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.